Well, we heard the lawyers testify of the miracle of them sharing 30 minutes, 10 minutes each. I'm going to give you a bigger miracle. I'm sharing my 20 minutes with a lawyer, and I'm going to bring him up here in just a moment. But I want to kind of set the table for what you're going to hear from attorney John Graves, who also works with our ministry and has been a tremendous hand in helping us with a lot of issues that we have confronted over the last 15 years of activism. I went to Pearland, Texas after spending 14 years in full-time evangelism. Kids were getting older, life was getting a little more complicated, and so I wanted to see if all those theories I developed over those years of travel would work. And I have to confess, the first 18 months of that work there was phenomenally encouraging. First thing that we implemented at First Baptist Pearland was a 24-hour prayer ministry. And in fact, that grew to something we called the Midnight Cry. Every so often on a Sunday evening, I would announce, next Friday night, we're going to have a midnight cry. And gentlemen, I'd read in the Bible where people prayed all night. I'd never been to an all-night prayer meeting, so we decided we'd have some. And I must say, God did some miraculous things. We would meet typically at about 6 or 8 p.m. If it was football season, it would be right after the football game. And we would literally pray all night. We'd typically start with 100, 200 folks. We'd dwindle down to about 30 or 40 in the middle of the night, and then they would trickle back in about daybreak. But God never failed to bless that effort, that prayer. And I believe that was the genesis of the evangelism. We began seeing souls saved every Sunday. In the first 18 months we were in Pearland, we baptized over 500 people into the church. And God clearly was moving. But you know, when God moves, Satan also moves. And one day a lady walked out the back door of the church and said, "Preacher, you going to the high school assembly?" I didn't even know there was one, frankly. But after I investigated, I decided I would send Rod Compton to monitor that high school assembly. I used to joke with my pastor friends, I was just like Moses. I leaned on my rod and my staff because Rod was my staff. And so Rod went, came back to my office, and I decided I'd better go. I'm not going to detail all of that happened and transpired. It's been the subject of documentaries. Several have written about it. I wrote a book myself entitled Enough is Enough, which we're going to make available to you that you can read the details. But out of that experience, I realized that the church had to be more than just come and hear. That we were to take our gospel, take our faith into the marketplace of ideas. And so I began to preach strongly on the need for people to change the culture. And within just a few years, we had 4 members out of 7 on the school board change the direction of the school. We put 3 of our members out of 5 on the city council. In fact, one of my arch nemesis in that city council as we began to get our people involved was a man by the name of Randy Weber. I had the privilege of baptizing Randy and his oldest son. His family had some Baptist background and joined our church. Randy is now a sitting member of Congress and standing for our values in the old Ron Paul seat as he was elected to the state, first the state legislature and then to Congress. Gentlemen, we underestimate the impact we can have if we take our Christianity beyond the walls of our church. So we got involved in civil affairs. Gentlemen, and I want to show the first slide right now. We are approaching a time when 2 worldviews are colliding. We are living in that day. And you can see the resulting carnage when 2 trains going in opposite directions collide. There are those in our culture who believe in the beginning God. And there are those in our culture who believe in the beginning no God. You can determine what a man believes virtually in every area of his life, but especially theologically, by whether he embraces those first 4 words in the Bible or not. We are living in a day when we are facing what I called back in March on a national conference call with James Dobson and Matt Staver, a Bonhoeffer moment. This is a day, and if you go to the next slide, gentlemen, we'll look at that picture of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. This is a day when God is calling a remnant of men in this country and women in this country who will stand up, speak up, and refuse to give up. We are aware that we are facing a mortal enemy, a supernatural enemy by the name of Satan. Satan never gives up ground he has stolen. It has to be taken back by force. Now, not the force of a blunt instrument, but the force of prevailing prayer coupled with dynamic evangelism and an understanding that we are to be salt and light in the culture. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was such a moment. Go to the next slide, if you will. You are not only responsible for what you say, but what you do not say, said Martin Luther. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said it in the following manner. Hitler is not my Führer. God is my Führer. Gentlemen, who is your Führer? For Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he said these words, silence in the face of evil is itself, say it, evil. Read the rest of that with me. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Now, gentlemen, we're going to talk about a plan for the next 15 minutes. I've asked a lawyer friend to give this. He is, in fact, the chief operating officer for Vision America. He wears two hats. He has his own private law firm, but he dedicates about 30 hours a week to what we're doing across this country. And we have verifiable proof that the church can make the difference in an election when it's mobilized. But here's what we're discovering. Many pastors who have preached to their people, and I would include most of you and hopefully all of you, you preach to your people to get registered. You have ongoing registration. But what we're discovering is even though we think our people are voting, the fact of the matter is they're still not voting. And we're losing our country because we just don't show up. When I went to First Baptist Pearland, began analyzing the finances of the church, and you know, I did some simple mathematics and said if everybody was just giving 5%, we would have 10 times the income. So I asked my financial secretary to do something. I never wanted to know what our people gave individually. I didn't trust myself with that kind of information. But I didn't mind knowing who gave percentages or what percentages were giving. So she drew me a pie chart, our financial secretary. And to my shock, about 50% of our people gave nothing the year before. But the greater shock was, if you boiled it down to those who gave between 10,000 and 100,000, it was only a small slither. Between 5 and 10, a little bit larger slither. Between 1 and 5, a bigger slither. And then between $0 and $100, the vast majority of those on the rolls of our church, and understand ours was an older church. A lot of people didn't even come to church. But the vast majority gave nothing or very little. But all I had to do once a year was put that pie chart in the bulletin. Nobody knew where anybody else fell, and I didn't know it. I made it clear I didn't know. But when they saw that pie chart, I said, where do you fall on this pie chart? Folks, if you give nothing, if you give $1 and you have an illness, I'll be there. If you have a family problem, I'll be there. Our church is not going to withhold ministry from anyone who asks us to reach out. But oh, how much more we could do if everyone would just do their part. And giving always went up during that emphasis. We're applying the same understanding now to asking churches to understand who's voting and who's not. Because, folks, we're losing because the church doesn't show up. Amen. If we show up, we win. I want John Graves to come and share how we do that. John, you come.